Hey Sopranos fans, welcome to another episode here on Bully Whispers, and we are here today to evaluate law number 9 of Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, win through actions, never through argument in The Sopranos. Now, unlike many of the other laws of power, Law 9 is pretty straightforward and has very little nuance, so we're going to do something a little bit different. Instead of the usual deep dives that we do with the more intricate laws, where we pick a couple of people or situations through which to evaluate all the different dynamics at play, today we will be going over quite a few people and situations because most of the characters on the show were more about action than argument.
Well, go ahead. Make a statement. Oh, I got fucking Johnny Cochran right here for you.
So in evaluating Law 9 in The Sopranos, we will be looking at Tony, Ralphie, Jackie Jr., Christopher, Meadow, Carmela, Feech, Jr., Charmaine, Leotardo, Vito, Richie Aprile, and of course everyone's favorite, Noah Tannenbaum.
Hey, yes, Manchetown!
You got that straight?
Now, this first instance was technically a verbal argument, but it ended with a statement about an action, so I'm going to let it slide, and that's the confrontation between Charmaine and Carmela. This is also a good instance to demonstrate one of the reasons that Greene says words can be so dangerous. You don't really know how the other person will take them. Carmela was unaware of how her words and mannerisms were being perceived by others, and inadvertently angered Charmaine. So when she got tired of Carmela looking down her nose at her, rather than bringing up how Tony could die or go to jail any day, how maybe everything Carmela had could be seized, or even the fact that everything in Carm's life was based on blood money, she ends it quickly, letting Carm know that she could have had Tony if she wanted him, but she didn't want him.
You slept with Tony?
I didn't marry him for a reason.
That one action, even decades later, was able to shut Carmela up better than any argument because what could she really say? It's important to note here, though, that one of the reasons Greene gives for actions being better than words is due to the fact that actions are less likely to offend, which obviously isn't the case here. It has to be the right action at the right time, and this will come up again later. However, since Charmaine's goal wasn't to win Carm over, rather it was to put her in her place, I'd say the timing was perfect. Despite being bested in that confrontation, Carmela has her own moments of choosing actions over arguments when she stole the $40,000 from the bird feeder and with Robert Wegler. She could argue with Tony day and night about the money, but it would make little difference, so she took it. With Robert Wegler, action would have been absolutely necessary because even the eloquence of Socrates couldn't salvage AJ's case. Now, before moving on to the more gangster-oriented examples, we will circle back around to how it has to be the right action in evaluating Noah Tannenbaum. Noah is hanging out with Meadow the first time he meets Tony, and is given a rather rude introduction. Now his first idea,
"It's lucky I didn't punch his fucking lights out,"
would have been a complete and total disaster. This is something I'm actually curious to hear your opinions on. Let me know down in the comments what you think would have happened if Noah had punched Tony. Actually, you know what? I think this will be my next episode. Keep an eye out for the upcoming episode of What If Noah Punched Tony. Anyways, luckily for Noah he didn't, and instead he just hit it and quit it with Meadow. While this didn't really win any arguments, it did earn him a place in the hearts of many Sopranos fans. That being said, regular viewers of the channel know I think Meadow would have made a terrible lawyer. Her arguments are usually irrelevant and or asinine.
The truth is, they bring certain modes of conflict resolution from all the way back in the old country. From the poverty of the Mezzogiorno.
And don't give me any of that poverty of the Mezzogiorno bullshit. We're in fucking Caldwell, New Jersey.
So it's no surprise that she breaks down when confronted, and she is forced to use action.
Jesus God, we know that. Is that your only point here? Because just getting what you want is for babies, not adults.
Whatever, I do what I want.
And now on to the more gangster-oriented examples, where we see Law 9 start being more intentionally implemented rather than emotionally defaulted to. We see this law very early in the series when Tony lets Junior symbolically become boss. In 1502, the mayor of Florence, Italy, was worried that an expensive block of marble that had been purchased for a statue of David had been ruined. Michelangelo said he could work with it and created a masterpiece. However, the mayor thought himself to be a bit of an aficionado, and when he saw it, he told Michelangelo to make the nose a bit smaller. Michelangelo knew this would ruin the statue, but he didn't want to offend the mayor, so he agreed and brought the mayor closer to help inspect. Michelangelo climbed up on the ladder and brushed some dust off the nose, but didn't alter the statue. By changing the angle from which the mayor viewed the statue and giving the appearance of work being done according to his orders, the mayor now loved the unchanged statue, despite the fact that he was actually ignored. This is very similar to what we see Tony doing with Junior. By giving the appearance that he is in charge and verbally backing him publicly, they made him very content in a situation where his influence was much less than he thought. This also provides a somewhat decent example of the only time in which Greene advocates for verbal arguments, and that's when engaging in deception. Although Greene uses it more in the context of being caught in a deception, which would make it more applicable to Vito, but we will get to him later. One example where we see Tony repeatedly trying verbal arguments over his more action-oriented style is with Richie Aprile. Tony is constantly confronting Richie verbally,
You know, I fucking hate the way you make me fucking ride you.
but isn't ready to act until he hears about an actual plot against him. Of course, Janice kills Richie first. However, Tony did learn his lesson and remembered it during his troubles with Feech.
Did I learn nothing from Richie Aprile?
Instead of continuing to try and stay on him like he did with Richie, he arranged for Feech to be sent back to jail, which is similar to what Count Victor Lustig did when confronted by somebody he sold a fake counterfeit money printer to. He compensated them with counterfeit money and waited for them to get arrested spending it. Now from here, all of our examples will focus on different aspects of the Jackie Jr. and Vito situations respectively. With Jackie Jr. robbing the card game, we will focus on two different aspects, and for the first, we circle back around to it being the right action. When Ralphie first tells Jackie the story of how Tony and his father robbed a card game to get respect, the wheel began turning in Jackie's head. He felt that if he replicated his father's actions, he would get his father's results. However, as far as we know, his father's actions didn't include a shootout. This difference ended up getting him killed, and it's in the dynamic between Tony, Ralphie, and Christopher regarding that punishment that we really see the essence of Law 9 play out. If you were to boil this law down to its most basic level, it would be that actions are more effective than arguments because you can't argue with results. Tony could have spent all day trying to explain the logic behind how he was handling it, but hot-headed Christopher wouldn't have heard it and may have even gotten angrier. However, after it was done, Chris came to understand the logic behind it.
Listen about Jackie. And you know, Ralph. How you handle that so it wouldn't stick to any of us.
Which is exactly how it plays out in Greene's ideal scenario. Moving on to the Vito situation, we will focus on two main aspects: his immediate reaction after being outed, and the dynamic between Tony and Phil over how to handle it. According to Greene, verbal arguments are most effective when caught in a deception, but Vito chose action. Not only that, he chose the wrong action. Running away was essentially admitting it, and he very well may have been better off staying, aggressively lying, and perhaps convincing them because they had known him for years, but more importantly, because they would have wanted to believe him. That being said, while Vito might have convinced them not to take the word of, quote, some douchebag from Yonkers, Finn would have proven more difficult. Since Finn was a civilian with no real horse in the race, it would have been harder for Vito to talk his way out, but still much better than running away, although you could argue that the real wrong action wasn't leaving, but coming back. Either way, after it was accepted that Vito was gay, we can see Law 9 at play in the interactions between Tony and Phil. First, we will look at this through the lens of the fan theory that Phil and Vito had formerly been lovers. If this were the case, then Phil's verbal arguments to get Tony to hand over Vito would have been on par with the recommendations by Greene. Phil argued passionately, throwing everything in the kitchen sink at Tony, even bringing Tony's father into it.
I gotta be frank. In your father's day, we wouldn't be having this conversation. A Fenoik and his crew, he knew how to handle that.
But Tony wouldn't listen, which goes to part of the reason why Greene says verbal arguments can be ineffective, because so much depends on the character and mood of the person you're talking to. Tony was always very stubborn. Combine that with the fact that he was growing increasingly insecure about the level of respect he was receiving, and it's no surprise that Tony was defiant. So when Phil finally did locate Vito, he did the right thing according to Law 9 and killed him rather than go back to Tony. Well, thanks for watching this episode here on Bully Whispers. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you at the next score.